Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're going to be diving into the world of podcasting today.
Sounds fun.
We've got some excerpts from this book.
Okay.
Expert Podcasting Practices for Dummies.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that one.
So we're going to be going through those, picking out the best tips, and, giving you the good stuff that you need to know to get started podcasting yourself.
Yeah. Expert Podcasting Practices for Dummies is a great book. Lots of good stuff in there for anyone who's thinking about starting a podcast or even, if you've already got one going.
Right.
So it's be a good deep dive.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So first up, the book asks, what should your podcast be about?
Okay.
Which seems
simple, right?
like a pretty simple question.
Yeah.
But I'm sensing that there's more to it than just...
You can't just pick any random topic, right?
Yeah.
You really want to tap into your passions, the things that you just love talking about.
Yeah.
The things that keep you up at night researching,
Right.
That's the kind of stuff that makes a great podcast, right?
Yeah.
When you're really enthusiastic about it, that comes through, and it makes it a lot more engaging for the listeners.
Right. So things that you would do even if you weren't getting paid to do it.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
But there's another really interesting point here.
Okay.
It's not just about what you love. It's also about finding a niche.
Okay.
So, instead of having just a general sports marketing podcast, you can have a podcast about extreme sports marketing, for example.
Oh, okay. I like that.
Something really specific.
Right.
That way you're attracting a really dedicated audience.
Yeah, makes sense.
People who are passionate about that specific area.
Yeah, it's a smaller audience.
Yeah.
But they're going to be really into it.
Exactly. And they're more likely to stick around.
Right. Okay. So let's say I found my niche.
Okay.
How do I keep my podcast from getting lost in the crowd?
That's a great question. And it's a challenge.
Yeah.
Because there are so many podcasts out there.
Right.
One of the keys is staying ahead of the curve.
Okay.
Podcasting is constantly changing.
Yeah.
So you got to keep learning. The book talks a lot about using search engines effectively.
So that means Googling all the latest podcasting trends?
Google's a good start.
Okay.
But don't forget about those blog-specific search engines.
Oh, okay.
And podcast-specific search engines, too.
Oh.
Those can really help you uncover some hidden gems.
Oh, cool.
New voices, new ideas, stuff you might not find otherwise.
All right, that's a good tip.
Yeah.
But I can already see how I could get overwhelmed by all that information.
Yeah, information overload is a real thing.
Right, the book talks about that, right?
It does. It gives some advice for managing all that information.
Okay.
For example, using RSS readers.
Right.
Like Bloglines or Google Reader.
Okay.
Those can help you create a personalized news feed. Just for podcasting information.
All right, that sounds helpful.
Yeah.
I am a big fan of organization.
Right.
So what about tagging systems?
Oh, yeah, those are great.
Okay.
Dell.ico.us, for example, lets you tag and categorize all the content you find.
Okay.
So you can easily find it again later. It's like building your own personal library of podcasting knowledge.
Okay. All right. So I'm learning all about podcasting.
Right.
I'm organized.
Okay.
I know a good podcast isn't just a one-person show.
Right.
The book, it talks about the roles of a podcast team.
It does. It breaks it down into, the hosts, the producers, the writers, sound engineers, web designers, even.
Okay, so I need a whole crew?
Well, it can be a big team.
Yeah.
Especially for those big professional podcasts.
Right.
But when you're starting out, you can definitely wear multiple hats.
Okay. Phew.
It's about working smarter, not harder.
Right. That makes me feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
So I might be the host, the producer, the writer,
exactly.
maybe even the sound engineer.
You got it.
Okay, speaking of recording.
Yeah.
Where's the best place to set up?
Well, a lot of people think they can just use their kitchen table.
Right.
But the book really stresses the importance of creating a dedicated home studio.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be fancy or anything, but it needs to be functional.
Okay, so what does functional mean?
Okay,
so in this case.
First of all, think about flexibility.
Okay.
Can you expand your setup later on?
Right.
Maybe upgrade your equipment.
Okay.
And then minimizing noise is crucial. So choose a quiet room.
Okay.
Use curtains maybe for sound absorption, and be aware of those external noise sources.
Okay, so
traffic, noisy neighbors.
Right.
Okay. Things like that.
So maybe soundproofing my basement.
That's a good idea, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Now, what equipment do I actually need
to
get started recording?
The book recommends a few essentials.
Okay.
First of all, closed-ear headphones.
Okay.
Those are important for noise isolation.
Right.
You need to be able to hear yourself clearly.
Right. I don't want to be distracted by my dog barking during a recording.
Exactly.
Okay, now microphones.
Oh, yeah?
There are so many options.
Oh, I know, right?
It's overwhelming.
It can be.
What do I need?
Well, for studio recording,
yeah,
condenser microphones are generally preferred.
Okay.
They're really sensitive.
Okay.
They pick up all those subtle nuances in your voice.
Mm-hmm.
The book actually recommends a few specific models.
Okay.
Like the AKG Perception 100 or 200.
Okay.
And the Marshall MXL 990.
All right, cool. Those are some good starting points.
Yeah.
So headphones, microphone, what else?
You'll need a digital audio workstation.
A what?
A DDAW.
Okay.
It's basically your command center for recording, editing, mixing, all that stuff.
All right.
GarageBand is a good option for Mac users.
Okay.
It's user-friendly, comes with some built-in sound effects and loops.
Oh.
If you need something more advanced, the book suggests Adobe Audition or Sound Booth.
All right. That's a lot of information.
It is, yeah.
I definitely want to minimize the amount of editing I have to do.
Right.
The book mentions something about one-take recording.
It does, yeah.
Is that even possible?
It is.
I feel like I'm going to make mistakes.
You will.
I need to.
And that's okay.
Really?
Yeah, the book actually says that embracing those imperfections can make your podcast more engaging, more relatable.
All right.
It's not about being perfect. It's about connecting with your listeners.
Right. It's supposed to sound like a conversation.
Exactly. Exactly. Not a performance.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I've heard about adding visuals to podcasts.
Okay, yeah.
Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, the book calls those enhanced podcasts.
Okay.
It's basically adding a multimedia layer to your podcast.
So listeners can see.
Yeah, like images, slideshows.
Oh, wow.
Even hyperlinks.
Really?
Yeah, it's a really cool way to enrich the listening experience.
Okay.
Give them some extra information.
Cool.
Yeah, but there are some limitations.
Okay.
The book points out that they mainly work with iTunes and iPods.
Okay.
So you might miss out on some listeners who are using other platforms.
Right. So it's kind of a trade-off.
Yeah. You have to weigh the pros and cons.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about those ID3 tags.
Right.
What are they?
Okay. So ID3 tags are basically like labels for your podcast. They tell media players and podcast directories all the important information about your show.
Okay, like the title.
Exactly. The title, the host, episode number, description.
Okay, got it.
All that good stuff.
Okay, but why do I need to worry about naming conventions?
Okay, well, using consistent and accurate ID3 tags, it's really important for making sure your podcast is categorized correctly.
Okay.
And that it's easy to find.
So it's kind of like creating a filing system.
Exactly.
For my podcast.
Yeah, so people can actually find it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So my podcast is ready to go.
Yeah.
My RSS feed is validated.
All right.
What's next?
Now it's time to get people to listen.
Right.
And that's where podcast directories come in.
Okay.
They're like the virtual yellow pages for podcasts.
Yeah.
They help listeners find new shows based on their interests.
Got it. So what are some of the key directories I should focus on?
Oh, iTunes is still the big one.
Cool.
It's the most popular platform for podcast discovery.
Right.
But don't forget about the others.
Okay.
Like Podcast Alley, Podcast Pickle.
Okay.
Those can help you reach a wider audience.
Got it. So I need to get my podcast listed in those directories.
Okay.
Okay, now what about building buzz?
Oh, right.
Before my podcast even launches?
That's a great idea.
Okay.
That's what we call pre-launch promotion.
Okay.
The book highlights some successful examples.
Okay.
Like T. Morris's Billabub Battings.
Okay.
And Phil Rossi's Crescent.
Okay.
They released teasers months in advance.
Oh, wow.
They built anticipation through blog posts, online engagement.
Okay.
They created a dedicated website with engaging content.
Cool.
All of that.
So I should be thinking about marketing even before I launch.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
And speaking of marketing.
Yeah. Welcome back to our deep dive into podcasting.
Glad to be back.
We've got more from expert podcasting practices for dummies to unpack today.
Yeah, we talked about a lot of stuff last time.
We did.
It was a lot to take in.
Yeah, from choosing a niche to setting up a studio to getting your podcast listed.
Right.
It's a lot.
Now let's get into actually recording.
Okay, that's good.
We were talking last time about how to reduce noise in recordings.
Right. That's super important.
Nobody wants to hear all that background noise.
No, it's distracting.
So how do we get rid of it?
Well, the book talks about this technique called noise gating.
Noise gating, what's that?
It's kind of like having a gatekeeper.
Okay.
That only lets the important sounds through.
Okay, I like that analogy.
So you set a volume threshold.
Okay.
And any sound below that threshold gets blocked out.
So it's like a filter.
Yeah, you could think of it that way.
That gets rid of all the extra noise.
Exactly.
Cool.
It's really good for eliminating those low-level hums and hisses.
Okay, what about those other techniques
the
book mentions?
Like compressors and software filters.
Yeah,
those are good too.
Okay.
Compressors can help even out the volume levels.
So it's not super quiet 1 minute and then really loud the next.
Exactly. Yeah, nobody wants that.
That makes it a lot easier to listen to.
Right. And then software filters.
Yeah.
Those can be used to reduce ambient noise.
Okay.
Like traffic or air conditioning.
So you use those after you've already recorded?
Yeah, in post-production.
Okay, cool. So lots of tools
to
get that nice, clean sound.
Exactly.
All right, what's next?
Well, now we get to unleash the power of one-take recording.
One-take recording? Hold on. Is that even possible?
It is.
I feel like I'm going to mess up and need to edit.
You probably will.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
The book actually says that those little imperfections can make your podcast more engaging.
Interesting.
People like to hear that you're human,
Makes it more real.
Exactly.
Okay, so how do I get better at one-take recording?
Well, first of all, don't rush.
Okay.
Pace yourself, Think of it like a conversation, not a performance.
Right.
And, you can also incorporate listener contributions.
Oh, okay.
Like responding to emails or social media comments.
Okay, that's a good idea.
Keeps things fresh.
Yeah, adds a little bit of spontaneity.
Exactly.
Okay, now those enhanced podcasts you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, those are cool.
What are they exactly?
So it's like taking your regular audio podcast and adding visual elements to it.
Okay.
Like images, slideshows, even hyperlinks.
Oh, wow. So people could actually see what I'm talking about.
Exactly, yeah.
That's pretty cool.
It is, but there are some limitations.
Okay. Yeah, there's got to be a catch.
The book says they mainly work with iTunes and iPods.
Ah, okay.
So you might miss out on some listeners who are using other platforms.
Makes sense. So it's something to consider.
Definitely.
Okay, cool.
Now, ID3 tags.
Okay, back to those.
Yeah, those are important.
So remind me again, what are those?
They're like labels for your podcast.
Okay.
They tell media players and directories everything they need to know. Gotcha. Like the title, host, episode number, description.
Okay. Yeah, I get it.
And it's super important to use the right naming conventions.
Right, because...
And make sure your podcast is categorized correctly.
Yes, and people can find it.
Exactly.
So it's all about organization.
It is, yeah. Think of it like creating a library card.
Got it. So now my podcast is labeled.
Okay.
It's ready to go.
What's next?
How do we get people to actually listen to it?
That's the big question, right?
Yeah.
We talked about blogs, but don't forget about social media.
Oh, right, of course.
That's a huge part of it.
Okay.
Places like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram.
Yeah.
You can build a whole community around your podcast.
So it's like an extension
Exactly.
to my podcast.
Yeah, you can share behind-the-scenes content.
Okay.
Engage with listeners, promote new episodes.
Cool. So it's all about interaction.
It is, yeah, keeping that conversation going.
Okay, now I want to go back to RSS feeds for a minute.
All right.
We talked about those before, but I'm still a little fuzzy on how they work.
Okay, think of it this way.
Okay.
Your podcast episodes are like letters.
Okay.
And the RSS feed is the envelope.
Got it.
It delivers them to your listeners.
So the RSS feed contains all the info about the podcast, each episode, and it's how people subscribe.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Good.
And validating the RSS feed?
Right.
That's like making sure the envelope's addressed correctly.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so we talked about podcast directories. Is there anything else I can do to get my podcast featured there?
There are a few things.
Okay.
First of all, make sure you have good artwork.
Okay.
And a compelling description.
So first impressions are important.
Very important.
Okay.
And then, engage with other podcasters.
Oh, okay.
Build relationships.
So networking is key.
It is, yeah. Just like any other industry.
Okay, that makes sense.
You can cross-promote each other's shows.
Yeah.
Get feedback, guest appearances.
Right. I like it.
Yeah.
Now, we talked about pre-launch promotion. What are some specific tactics that work well?
One thing the book mentions is teaser trailers.
Like a movie trailer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Give people a taste of what your show's about.
Build some excitement.
Exactly.
All right.
And leverage your existing network.
Okay.
Tell your friends, family, colleagues,
Word of mouth is still important.
It is. People trust recommendations.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, now what about tools?
Yeah.
Or platforms that can help with promotion?
Tons of them out there.
Like what?
Well, for social media, there are scheduling tools.
Okay.
Like Hootsuite or Buffer.
I've heard of those.
Those can help you automate your posts.
Saves me time.
Yeah.
Definitely.
What about email marketing?
Oh, that's a great one.
Okay.
Platforms like MailChimp or ConvertKit can help you build an email list.
Okay.
Send out newsletters.
So it's a way to stay connected.
Exactly, yeah.
With my listeners.
Yeah, keep them updated on new episodes.
Okay. Events, all that stuff.
So it's a direct line of communication.
It is.
All right, now speaking of marketing.
Yeah.
All right, welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Glad to be here.
We've been talking all about podcasting.
Yeah, tons of great info.
Using expert podcasting practices for dummies as our guide.
A great resource for sure.
In the last couple parts, we talked about everything from pitching a topic,
right,
setting up your studio, getting your podcast out there.
It's a whole process.
Now I want to shift gears a bit.
Okay.
Talk about how podcasting can be used for different purposes.
Sounds good.
Different audiences.
Yeah, the book goes into that.
It does.
It talks about podcasting for things like
okay.
corporate stuff, government, nonprofits.
Okay, so like corporate podcasting. It seems like every company has a podcast now.
It's definitely popular.
But is it actually effective?
It can be, yeah. It's a good way for companies to connect with people.
Okay.
Employees, customers, stakeholders. But you got to do it right.
So it's not just about putting your logo on a podcast and calling it a day.
No, definitely not.
Okay.
The book talks about setting clear goals.
Right.
You know, what are you trying to achieve with this podcast?
Right.
What message do you want to send?
And who are you trying to reach?
Exactly. That's crucial.
Okay, so it takes some planning.
It does, yeah.
What about the logistics?
Oh, okay.
So working within a company.
Yeah, the book talks about that too.
Okay.
You got to navigate those corporate guidelines.
Right.
Make sure everything's approved.
Okay.
Work with the IT department.
Yeah, I can't have a rogue podcast running around.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance between creative freedom and corporate responsibility.
Okay, cool. Now what about podcasting?
Yeah.
For like government agencies, nonprofits.
Yeah, that's a whole other world.
It is, but I can see how it could be useful.
Definitely.
Like connecting with the public, sharing information. But how do they make sure their message gets heard?
Well, you got to make it engaging.
Okay.
You know, content that people actually want to listen to.
Okay, so think about your audience.
Yeah, what are they interested in?
Right.
What do they need to know?
Give them something valuable.
Exactly. Make it informative and entertaining.
Any examples of podcasts that do this well?
Yeah, the book mentions a few.
Okay.
Like the White House podcast.
Oh, okay.
Keeps people updated on current events.
Okay.
Policy initiatives.
Interesting.
And then there's the Arts Edge podcast from the Kennedy Center.
Okay.
That was about art and culture.
Cool.
Interviews, performances, behind-the-scenes stuff.
I like it. It's cool to see how podcasting can be used.
Yeah.
For all sorts of things.
Definitely.
Okay, now let's talk about promotional podcasts.
Okay.
We touched on this before.
I did.
But I want to dig a little deeper.
Right.
What makes a good promotional podcast?
Okay, so the key is to find that balance.
Okay.
Between promotion and entertainment.
Right, you don't want it to sound like a commercial.
No, exactly. You got to make it engaging.
Okay.
People should want to listen to it.
Even if it's promoting something.
Right, exactly.
Any examples of podcasts that do this well?
The book talks about Scott Sigler.
Okay.
He's a horror and sci-fi author.
All right.
He used podcasting to build a huge following.
Wow.
He released his novels as free serialized podcasts.
Really?
Yeah, it was really innovative.
So he basically gave away his books for free?
In a way, yeah, but it worked.
That's amazing.
He ended up getting book deals with major publishers.
Wow. So podcasting can really launch a career.
It definitely can.
What about nonprofits?
Yeah, there's a good example in the book.
Okay.
The Mommy Cast.
Okay.
It's a podcast about, well, being a mom.
All right.
And it attracted some big sponsors.
Wow. How did they do that?
They were just really authentic.
Okay.
Relatable, honest.
People connected with that.
Yeah, and sponsors wanted to be part of it.
Makes sense. So it's a win-win.
It can be, yeah.
Now let's talk about the big question.
Yeah.
Monetization.
The million-dollar question.
Right. Can you actually make money from podcasting?
You can, but you got to be realistic.
Okay.
It's not a get-rich-quick scheme.
Okay, so no instant riches.
Probably not. No.
But you can still make money.
You can. Yeah, it just takes time and effort.
So how do you do it?
Well, advertising is the most common way.
Okay. Like running ads during the podcast?
Yeah. Before, during, after.
All right.
There are also sponsorships.
Okay.
Where a company pays to be mentioned.
Okay.
And some people do listener donations.
Oh, right, like through Patreon.
Exactly.
So there are different options.
Lots of options.
Okay, good to know.
The important thing is to find what works for you.
Right, and for your audience.
Exactly. You don't want to alienate your listeners.
Right, right.
You got to be authentic.
Okay, so we've talked about the good stuff.
The fun stuff.
But the book also mentions this thing called pod fade.
Yeah, that's the not-so-fun stuff.
What is that?
Basically, it's podcast burnout.
Okay.
You lose motivation.
Oh, I can see how that could happen.
It happens to a lot of people.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
It is, so you got to take care of yourself.
So how do you prevent it?
Well, the book suggests taking breaks.
Okay.
Step away for a bit, recharge,
right,
reevaluate your goals.
Okay.
Maybe change up your format.
Keep things fresh.
Exactly. Make sure you're still enjoying it.
Right, it shouldn't feel like a chore.
Definitely not.
Now, what if you decide to end your podcast?
Yeah, sometimes that happens.
How do you do that gracefully?
Well, the book says communication is key.
Okay.
Let your listeners know in advance.
Right, don't just disappear.
Exactly. Explain your reasons.
Okay.
Thank them for their support.
So it's like saying a proper goodbye.
It is, yeah. Leave on a positive note.
I like it.
Yeah.
Well, expert speaker, we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have, yeah.
From the technical stuff to the creative stuff.
All thanks to Expert Podcasting Practices for Dummies.
Such a great resource.
Definitely.
What's the one thing you hope listeners take away from this deep dive?
I'd say podcasting is a powerful medium.
It is.
With careful planning,
right,
the right tools, and a passion for your topic, you can create something truly amazing.
So true. Don't be afraid to experiment.
Yeah, have fun with it.
Absolutely. And remember, listeners, sound has the power to connect us.
It does.
Inspire us. Even change the world.
So use your voice.
Make a difference.
Happy podcasting.
Until next time.